This is the Severn Estuary, and it's the biggest coastal estuary in the UK and the most built on, with over 1 million people living on its shores. Now, estuaries are formed when the outgoing freshwater meets the incoming saltwater, thus forming these huge mud banks. Now, at first sight, this all might appear pretty lifeless, but nothing is further from the truth. The mud is stuffed with all kinds of food for all kinds of creatures, and I'm told it's very important feeding sites for resident and migrant birds. Now, to find out the importance of this gooey mud, I've arranged to meet Eddie from the RSPB. I understand he's already here. Well, he's out there somewhere. He looks miles away. I think I better start walking. Eddie! I'm on my way! I won't rush though. I'll just stroll though. Well, I'm still here, and he's still out there. The water is really, it's a really nasty looking colour. I suppose it's the mud, really, that makes it like that. Wouldn't like to swim in it. You know, I couldn't swim till I was about 18 years old. I was in the RAF doing my national service. I was in Malta. And Malta in those days wasn't built up at all. It was very uncommercialised, and all the bays were clear and beautiful. I remember all of us went swimming one day to a place called Peter's Pool, which was quite deep. And they were all swimming, and I was just sitting on the edge, and they picked me up and they chucked me in. As I was drowning, they realised that I couldn't swim. So they dragged me out, and then there was one friend of mine called Tony Barker. It's amazing how you just remember a name, Tony Barker. Whatever happened to Tony? Well, he took me round to a bay and he taught me to swim. And when I came back 2 years later, I was swimming and diving and jumping, and I was very grateful to Tony because that's where I learned to swim, in Malta. And I've loved swimming ever since. But I couldn't till I was 18. I'm still not swimming out there, though. Eddie! I'm on my way! That's what he thinks. Estuaries are fascinating places. So much going on. See, what amazes me is how many types of birds that you get on the estuary.
It's incredible, isn't it? There's over about 20 different shorebirds which actually feed on this type of mud around here.
And what do they feed on?
Well, they're feeding on various different worms that are deep down in the mud, different shellfish, like mussels and cockles, and you also get birds which are feeding in amongst all the seaweeds.
How do they get the food?
Well, they all have different types of beaks to tackle all these different shells, to get inside them or just peck them off the surface. Yeah. And I've got some skulls to illustrate to you just how these birds actually feed in this very harsh environment here.
You brought the skulls all the way out here?
I have, yes. Got them in my bag here.
Oh, brilliant, okay.
So I will, well, this first one we've got here is typical of a wading bird that would actually feed on the top surface of the estuary like this.
It's amazing, that, look.
They have very short, thin beaks. Yeah. This one's typical of a lapwing or a golden plover, and they would just walk along the top surface of the mud, picking off tiny little creatures sitting on the surface, such as small snails and tiny worms.
So delicate.
It is very, very delicate, and the tiny tip there is ideal, like little tweezers, just to pick off things off the top surface there. The second one I've got to show you is this one. It is of an oyster catcher. An oyster catcher's...
Only catches oysters?
Well, they don't actually. They tend to feed on other things like mussels and cockles. And there's two different types of beak. Some of them have a very pointed beak, which is able to stab between the two sections of shells. And the other one is more like a hammer, where it's quite blunt, and they will actually stab away and bash away at the shell to break into it.
Oh, I see.
And oyster catchers will also probe into the mud a little bit to actually catch the cockles and go in amongst all the mussel beds that you tend to find on the rocks. Next one that I've got is this one here, which is even longer. We're getting longer and longer.
This one's the size of that.
From a bird called a godwit.
Yeah.
And godwits really do probe their beaks into the mud, and they have a very sensitive tip to their beak where there's lots of nerve endings. and these can feel for any vibrations in the mud. So if there's any movement of a worm that's living deep down in the mud, they will sense that and they will quickly snap shut their beak and then bring it back out to swallow.
That's incredible. Is that the longest? Is that the longest bill?
It's not quite the longest bill. The longest bill is actually from this bird here. Look at the size of this.
Jeez, look at the size of that. That's enormous.
Curlew's got the longest beak of any British
That's
wading
amazing.
bird. You can see that it's very long
Yeah.
and it's very down curved. And what they do is they pop their beak into the mud and then they can swivel their head around in the mud. And again,
That's
it's
brilliant.
very sensitive right at the tip,
Yes.
so they can feel for any vibrations. And again, they will quickly pick up any lugworms or other types of creatures that are living very deep down in the mud.
Now tell me one thing. I mean, there, hundreds of birds, but are there any in danger of becoming extinct?
Well, all the wading birds are pretty much at risk, really. If an estuary like this was to get polluted with oil, or if people were to build sort of on the higher bits of the estuaries, then they can have quite an impact on the birds, just as much as if they build harbours or bays where the water is very high all the time. It means that there's less mud exposed for the birds to actually feed in the mud.
Well, it's a big box, Ed. What else have you got in there?
Well, one thing you can find a lot on the foreshore are seashells. Okay, the first one I've got here is this one called a razor shell, and these actually
Weird.
sit themselves vertically into the mud, and they have little siphons coming out to the surface so they can breathe, and inside there you'd have the actual the actual creature itself.
Yes.
Then we have this one here, which is a small type of oyster shell.
Yeah, wonderful markings.
Got lovely
there,
different pale-coloured markings, very smooth inside here.
Yeah.
And then this one here, which is the mussel shell, which is the
Yes.
shell that the oyster catcher would feed on. Those ones with the pointed beaks would peck their way down this
Through
crevice here and open it up. And you can see that even on here you've got some little barnacles as well, which have
yeah.
attached themselves to the outskirts of this mussel shell. That you can find again in amongst the seaweed, just on the foreshore where the tide goes out, and it gives you an idea of the sort of things that are actually living in this what looks like quite bleak and dirty
Well,
mud.
I tell you, I mean, I've been amazed, and I thank you, for coming out and showing me all
That's
this.
all right, thank you.
Particularly the skulls.
Okay.
And I wish you well.
Thank you.
And thanks again, Ed.
That's all right, thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed that. You know, Ed is an ornithologist, a zoologist, a BSc, and he's only 22. Makes you sick, doesn't it? Well, you can't doubt his enthusiasm. Ed really knows his stuff. Eddie told me that the best time to visit an estuary like this is in the winter. That's when the migrant birds arrive in their thousands. It's not completely devoid of life in the summer, though. Some birds spend the whole year here. Those clouds look ominous. You don't need me to tell you how important this mud is. You just have to watch the birds to get that answer. You know, as a kid, I've always loved beachcombing and in all kinds of weathers. And this morning, I found a few things that might interest you. There we are. That's a seagull's feather. Probably seen better days, but I might stick it in my hat later. And I've got a wonderful crab. Look at that. It's dead, but it's a great shape, isn't it? And here, I believe that's a limpet. Got great markings on that. Can you see that? That's a limpet. And best of all, look at that. That is an egg sac of a dogfish. And that's known also as a mermaid's purse. So if you remember the film Splash, then this could have been Daryl Hannah's purse. So I think I'll keep this. It was Frank Sinatra that said, "I always know when the English summer is here because the rain is warmer." Not today, it isn't. It's freezing. Out in the bay at Bridgewater lie 2 islands. The largest of them is Steep Holm. The smallest one is called Flat Holm. That's where I'm off to next. Flat Holm, which is just 5 miles off the coast from Barry in South Wales, is a fairly small island, measuring only 60 acres in total. It's a triple SI, which in wildlife protection terms is as good as it gets, and is run by the Flat Holm Project, whose ongoing task is to monitor and improve the habitat here. Around this time of the year, Brian Baily and his team come to ring the young gulls.
But if you can just see in front of me there's just some grass moving, and I think there's a gull in there. So it's basically going up fairly carefully, parting the grass so as not to damage the gull. Hope that it doesn't actually peck you too much. And there's one of our friends. Okay, so we'll take him back now, and he'll be ringed and so forth, and then hopefully he'll be okay.
Brian is always up against the clock, but he managed to find time to tell me what it was all about. So, Brian, you told me that you've been doing this for many years. So what was it that got you interested in the first place?
I suppose, like all of us, it's your childhood things. I came to Weston-super-Mare as a kid and looked out across and saw the 2 islands there, Flat Holm and Steep Holm, and thought, wouldn't it be great to go out there? And then I heard that they were starting this project on Flat Holm for a nature reserve. And they said, oh yes, we'd be quite interested if we started a ringing group out there. So there were about half a dozen of us or so started the ringing group up. There's one thing I'll say about this job, it gets your knees after a bit, Martin, doesn't it? Oh dear, okay, but we started off ringing gulls, and we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to know where these gulls were going to from Flat Holm? So we started actually ringing them first with just a metal ring, and then we weren't getting much results from that because metal rings, you really got to collect the rings to see them again, or catch the birds to see them again. So we devised the scheme that we've been using, as you've seen us using today, where we have 3 digits on the ring. So once we put that ring on the bird, they become an individual. And from that, of course, we get the data of where our birds are going to. Off you go then, boy. Oh no. Let's go and catch a few more then, because we've still got a few more to do.
Obviously the birds don't live forever, so when they do eventually keel over, how many rings do you get back? And have you had any interesting returns?
It's not the spectacular recoveries we've had, though we have had recoveries as far down as Morocco. But the interesting part is the way that the pattern of recoveries over the last 5 to 8 years has changed. When we were ringing first, the majority of our young birds left here and went down and spent 4 years down on the Iberian Peninsula. And then they gradually worked themselves back. So we probably wouldn't see those birds until 4 years' time. But in the last 5 years, this has changed, and our birds are beginning to appear within 3 or 4 weeks in places like Gloucester Tip, over, of course, on the Welsh coast and things like that. But the juvenile birds aren't moving away as they used to. They're really staying around. You all right, mate? Go on. Oh, he wants to come and say hello. Go on. He may turn up down in Portugal, Spain, on Gloucester Tip, you never know.
As far as the gulls are concerned, how important is this wonderful island of Flat Holm?
Very important. We have in the British Isles somewhere like 80% of the total world's population of lesser black-backed gulls. Here we have 2.5% of that 82%, if you want to work out exactly that. And also it's interesting because it is a colony that is still growing. If we look at the other Welsh colonies of Scomer, Scocombe and Ramsey, we find that their numbers are actually going down, where our numbers here, they're going up about 10% every year. So this is a very, very important area for the lesser blackback.
No, I really enjoyed my stay here, but for anybody watching, if they wanted to come and visit here, what could they expect to see?
If you come across it this time of the year, of course, here from about May through until August, it'll be dominated by the Gull colony. And that itself is, if you've never been in a Gull colony, and if you've never been attacked by gulls as we've been today, that in itself is an experience. But if you want to come and spend a night here, as you have yourself, I mean, you must admit that there's something different, isn't there, about being on an island. Once the boat's gone, there's something really different about being on an island by yourself at night.
It's quite obvious you love coming here, Brian. So how long do you think you'll be coming back here for?
Well, I don't know. Hopefully I'll be coming here until, well, I said to my wife, perhaps you'll bring my ashes over here and scatter them over where we've been working today, I don't know. And I should then be part of the island, I'm not sure.
I've been walking now for about 3/4 of an hour. I'm nowhere near catching up with the man I've come to meet. That is Brendan Sellick, and he's a mud horse fisherman. That means he puts all his gear on a sledge and slides it across the soft mud towards his nets. Now, he's been working on this estuary now for 40 years. He's a dying breed. He's the last of his kind. Mind you, the speed I'm going, he could be retired by the time I get out there. It's been a long journey out here, I can tell you something. I'll just stay put and wait. Estuaries are dangerous places. I wouldn't dare come this far out if I wasn't meeting Brendan.
Oh, you didn't break your leg.
I bet you
I've
do.
always been lucky, really.
Yeah.
Kept fairly fit and that. Yeah, lovely.
Well, the tide's coming in fast now, Brendan. How high does it to get to?
Oh, on the spring tides, it comes right up. We wouldn't be able to sit here.
Oh,
17
really?
metres high. It's colossal volume of water, and it's the second highest volume of water in this Bristol Channel in the world. Incredible, really, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. It's amazing.
Yeah,
You're a mud horse fisherman, aren't you?
that's it. Yes.
So can you tell me
Well,
about those?
when I first started 50 years ago, when I left school, there was a dozen people doing this job here then. But of course now it's just finished up. There's just us left.
Are you the only one left now?
The only one left, yeah, the last one.
And you've been doing it for 40 years?
50,
50
52.
you've been doing it?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 52 years.
On this stretch
yeah,
of the
on this
estuary?
stretch, yeah, non-stop. The mud horse is an implement that we've never improved on, and I think it goes back to the Roman times. Certainly hundreds of years they've been using this mud horse in these estuaries, a means of getting across the mud, bogs of mud without sinking.
Yeah.
Because it's treacherous mud flats, and there's no way you could get across these mud flats without, like on the mud horse, sliding across the top of it.
Well, I nearly sank
Yeah,
when I went out there.
yeah, that's right. And certain places you could easily disappear. There's so much mud there.
And when you get out there, I mean, what kind of fish
Well,
do you catch?
We catch all sorts. Shrimp, prawn, and skate, Dover sole, plaice, mullet, sea bass.
And you've never been out there on a day and not caught
Oh,
fish?
well, we have, yes. It's hit
Is
and
it
miss.
seasonal? I mean, is it?
Well, it is seasonal. usually this time of the year we get 2 or 3 months of cod, whiting and sprats, and then another place to come in, and Dover sole, and it goes around like that. They each come in their season. You're dealing with nature, and I go out today and not catch much. I go out tomorrow and there's a beautiful lot of fish.
You eat a lot of fish yourself? Yeah?
I do, yeah. I've always eaten a lot of fish. I don't have to buy it, but at the same time, I do eat a lot of fish and always have done.
Yeah.
My father was the same, but it brought up with it, I suppose.
But 50 years doing this, have you ever thought you might give it up or retire gracefully into the sunset?
No, I still, it's just the element of surprise doing it, and as long as I'm fit and able to go across there, well, I just look forward to them going out.
Now, what about, your sons? Will they take over?
Yes, should I finish, they'll take it on, and they help me out now a lot.
Yeah.
And the grandson.
So it'll go on forever?
I think so, yeah, as long as they can make a living at it.
So there'll always be mud horse fishermen around?
I would think so, yes, because what we catch now, at least we do get a fair price for the product we catch, whereas years ago you used to have to catch a lot of fish and all you were getting was pennies.
Yeah.
But now if you catch a nice quality fish, it does sell all right.
Yeah. You can always have races out there.
Yeah.
Mud horse fisherman races.
Yeah. Oh,
you
could
do you?
Well, we used to years when we were
really?
young. Yeah, but it's people haven't got they don't want to do that now. Get too muddy. Oh, we do have good fun out there, especially on a really nice day. It's you've got thousands of acres of mud flats and plenty of space to play around on.
Yeah. You take the wife out there sometimes?
Well, yeah, she used to go out many times. When we were younger.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, no, we used to go out.
Oh, is that why you've got 7 kids?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, great, Brendan. It's a very posh name, your name, isn't it? Brendan Sellick.
Sellick, yes, I don't know.
You're no relation to Tom Sellick,
yes,
right?
they tell me we are, yes, because a lot of the old Sellicks from this area, the West Country, migrated to California.
Yeah, he might be able to get you a part,
Yeah, he might, well, who knows? Yeah.
Can I take some fish home with me?
Yeah, sure.
And the wife?
Oh, yeah, she likes fish.
No, I was going to take her home with me.
Oh, good, yeah.